If you want to be on top of this season's colour trends, then stay tuned for today's video. Hi there, welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you are a subscriber. My name is Sarah and I am the Style Coach. This channel is all about personal style and personal development, so if that's your thing, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. This week's video is all about the colour trends that we're going to be seeing over autumn winter 2021 into 2022. I want to share with you the colour trends so that you can invest wisely, because this is not about buying things just because they're on trend, but buying things because they suit you and you will have them for years to come. These colour trends come from Pantone, who is the colour authority when it comes to fashion trends. So we're going to be looking today at the colour trends that we've seen in London and in New York. Of course, these are the big powerhouses when it comes to fashion weeks and colour trends as well. And I'll be sharing with you where I would place the colours in terms of colour season. So if you've had a colour consultation done, you can choose your colours wisely and invest wisely. If you haven't had your colour consultation done, what are you waiting for? Get in touch. I do them internationally. So before we dive into today's video, can I please ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let's get started. So let's first have a look at a general overview of the colour trends from New York and from London. Let's first take a look at New York. It's 10 colours plus the 4 core classic colours that they have as well. My first impression of New York is some of the colours are quite sharp, they're quite bold, they're quite a statement. There's something quite zingy about them, and there's quite a lot of bright colours there. Then as we move into the kind of more typical autumnal tones, we do see that softness and the warmth coming through. And the core classics are actually quite light this time. What we don't see is black. We can move away from black and embrace colour here in the New York colour palette. Now, when we compare this to the London colour palette and its 4 classic colours, it's definitely a more muted feel. And of course, this is a reflection of the general tone of the city. I think the fashion statements are very different in New York and in London, and I think that's reflected in the colour choices. So definitely London seems to be a little bit more muted, a little bit more played down compared to New York. Having said that, we can see that in the core classics, they're actually quite similar. There's a few overlapping colours there. So with this in mind, the general overview, let's take a closer look at these colours and see exactly where they fit in and who they suit best. So looking at this first line of colours comparing London and New York, we can see now that that those bright and clear colours of New York are certainly a little bit more vibrant compared to the London colours. We've seen a lot of this Kelly green coming through across the high street, dripping down through the catwalks. And we see it in London with this green bee. It's ever so slightly on the warmer side. I see a touch of yellow in it, and it's quite a clear colour. So I would say this is a colour that sits quite happily within something like the spring palette. So if you have those fresh, lighter tones of vibrancy about your look, then this green is going to look super. On the other side in New York, we have a green. It's a slightly deeper and cooler green than London's green, and it's called Leprechaun. This would definitely be more at home within the winter colour palette. It has depth to it, and it's certainly moving away from the yellow tones, moving into a neutral space and into the deeper tones. So anybody who loves those jewel tones, wearing those jewel tones, or certainly even slightly moving into the autumn tones, maybe the deeper autumn tones, could certainly pull this off really well. We can see a crossover here with the colour Illuminating. Now, of course, this has been the colour of the year for Pantone in 2021, and so it was quite obvious that we were going to see this appear. It's leaning on the cooler side of yellows. Naturally, yellow is a warmer tone. We put yellow into colours to make them warmer. However, we can have icy yellows, lemon yellows that move into the cooler categories. This illuminating colour is ever so slightly moving into the cooler tones. And so I would see this quite happily on a winter person, but also I would see it on a spring person as well. So it's the clarity of this colour that's giving it that vibrancy, that freshness that could make it work for spring as well. So staying with the London colours and moving into tomato cream here. So this is definitely more of an autumn colour. It has depth to it. It's definitely warmer. It reminds me of pumpkins and autumn leaves. So definitely if you are in the autumn category, if you have that depth to your features, the warm undertones, this is going to look phenomenal on you and a great place to invest your money in a winter coat in this colour. Moving on to Ibiza blue. It's almost like a Chinese blue, and that would sit in the winter category. So again, those jewel tones, that would look great on somebody with darker features and maybe a pale skin as well. I could see it on anybody with a cooler undertone as well. And then finally, when we look at this colour winery, we're definitely on the cooler side of colours. I mean, it's moving into that burgundy, Bordeaux type of colour. A deep ruby red, and again I'm feeling these jewel tones coming through. So the winter category, anybody with that depth and the coolness about them is going to look really great in this colour. And as we move down into the New York colours, we're looking at this Mykonos blue, and this for me, while it has depth to it, there's a little bit of softness to it as well. And I would see this sitting quite happily, I think, amongst the autumn category. I think it would work well. There's a certain, there's some muted tones about this colour that I think softens it a little bit. And so I would see this perhaps on an autumn person. And then we move on to this really fun colour of Fuchsia Fedora. What a great name. That definitely a colour we would see in the winter category, possibly in the bright winter. And it's a sharp colour, it's vibrant, it's clear, and it's cool. So certainly somebody with the winter features about them is going to wear this really well. What a beautiful coat this would make. Finally, in this row of New York colours, we see pale rosette. And for me, this is kind of almost like a light clear salmon. So I think I would see this sitting in the spring category quite nicely. Let's compare the second line of colours now. And moving into London's First Blush, it's almost like a dirtier colour than we saw of that New York's colour, the pale rosette. Slightly dirtier and slightly cooler, I feel, as well. This would be quite nice on a summer person. So those muted, delicate tones and a little bit on the cooler side would be fantastic. Now we have this depth with Downton Brown, and for me this is quite a neutral colour. Chocolate brown tends to be quite neutral anyway, but the depth of this I think would have to be on the likes of an autumn person or a winter person to really pull this off quite well. It is quite a neutral colour apart from the depth, so I would lean into those deeper seasons of autumn and winter for this one. Then we've got Daylily. I love the name. Where do they come up with these names? Daylily is certainly on the warmer side of the yellows. We looked at those cooler illuminating colours, and when we compare them side by side, we can see how much of a difference there is. Illuminating definitely more icy, whereas Daylily has more depth to it and more warmth, and I could see it quite happily in the autumn category. London's Clear Sky has a delicate light feel about it, a fresh feel, and certainly on the cooler side, but I could see it on a summer or a spring person in those kind of lighter, light summer, light spring. Will carry this off quite well. And then finally for London, we have possibly the most vibrant colour we've seen for London, and that is Red Alert. And it is this really sharp, loud red. It's kind of like a true red, but a really bright true red. And I would see this on a bright winter perhaps. It's just so vivid. It's so saturated with colour. It would belong on somebody with those brighter features. So possibly bright winter, even into bright spring as well, I would say. Now looking at New York's more muted colours, we see Adobe, and it's got this kind of rust feeling, certainly on the warmer side, and it has that depth, almost bronzy colour to it, definitely I would see this on the autumn person. Moving on then to Fire Whirl, and this for me has a little bit of depth to it. And I would say it's leaning into that kind of almost tomato red colour, which we find in the autumn season again. So I would certainly place that on the warmer side. Then we have Rhodonite, a very deep, clear navy that we would see on a winter person. There's a real clarity to this navy. It's almost black. It's kind of a colour you had to look twice at to really understand that it's on the navy scale and it's not actually a black. So definitely in the winter category here. Spring Lake is another lovely name for this colour. It's certainly more muted. It's softer than the previous colour that we've seen in the Rhodonite. It has a little bit of depth to it and it's almost moving into a teal. It's just missing that little bit of green that would make it a teal. I think it would belong on the muted autumn person, or perhaps even on a summer person as well, because those colours are muted. They're a little bit more delicate. I think it would work quite well on either the autumn or the summer. And then we have Root Beer. So Root Beer is again this kind of a chocolatey brown. I would say compared to Downton Brown, it's moving towards the warmer colours. It's a little bit richer, a little bit warmer. And so I would place this on the autumn person and I think it would look super. Now finally, let's compare the core classics, and we do see an overlap here. So let's just talk about those first. In each colour palette, we do see Olive Branch featuring. It's a muted colour. It's a warm colour. It would definitely be at home on somebody with those autumn features. The first two colours in each palette, Perfectly Pale and Coconut Cream, they are almost identical. However, I see a little bit more warmth in the London Perfectly Pale colour than coolness in the Coconut Cream. These are both kind of off-whites, so you could really use them for neutrals. The Perfectly Pale being a little bit warmer, you could use for the autumn category or the spring category. And for the Coconut Cream, I would definitely see that more on the winter or indeed this summer person as well. Another overlapping colour is Ultimate Grey. So Ultimate Grey is another colour of the year along with Illuminating that has been present throughout 2021. So it was no surprise that we were seeing it here in the autumn winter collections. Ultimate Grey is a very neutral colour. This kind of a grey is very neutral, very wearable, and so it would suit pretty much everybody. Moving into London's After Midnight, it has this incredible depth to it that almost make it look black. However, it's just tipping onto the side of, it's got that blue in it, giving it that coolness. There's depth there. Certainly a winter person would pull this off beautifully. And last but not least, we have Soybean in the New York Core Classics. This definitely has a little bit of warmth to it. It's a little bit more muted, I would say, and I would put this on an autumn person and I think it would look quite well. So there you have a quick summary of New York and London's colour palettes for autumn winter 2021. So if you haven't an idea of what I'm talking about when I say autumn, spring, summer, winter, please get in touch and organise your very own colour consultation so that you can take the guesswork out of all this colour business. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it or learned something new, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I hope to see you again next week. Take care.